Is Bill Lamar. I'm the pastor of the Metropolitan African Methodist Episcopal Church here in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. We are live from National City Christian Church in Washington in the midst of this election season as we send out sounds for justice, prayers for a just democracy, and commitment to count every vote, no matter how long it takes, for a safe and fair election on this day. You are joining a more prophetic vote as we ring out bells, shine a light, and pray prophetically together for a just democracy. My honor to introduce my friend and brother, Rabbi Jonah Pesner, Director of the Religious Action Center and Senior Vice President of Union for Reform Judaism here in Washington, who will lead us in prayer, followed by my friend and sister, Rev Dr Alexander, Associate General Secretary, Action and Advocacy for Justice and Peace, the National Council of Churches, who will offer a reflection. We will conclude with the sound for justice from Reverend Alexander, the Associate General Secretary of the Action and Advocacy for Justice and Peace for the National Council of Churches. Reverend Stephen Baines, the Interim Executive Pastor of the National City Christian Church of Washington, D.C., will also share with us. Thank you for joining us.
Shalom uvracha aleichem, peace and blessings upon you. I'm Rabbi Jonah Pesner, the director of the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, the largest and most diverse denomination in Jewish life, and proudly the site of the drafting of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 by the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights. Bishop Barber, you would remind us that the Voting Rights Act was not actually written in our conference room in Washington at the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, but rather it was written in blood in Selma and transcribed in my conference room. Because we know that along with Congressman John Lewis, who was beaten on the Edmund Pettus Bridge as he marched, Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner, two young white Jewish men and a young black Christian man, gave their lives in Mississippi's summer for the right to vote. And this year we remember C.T. Vivian, John Lewis, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, all of whom spent their lives struggling for the most sacred act in a democracy, the right to vote. And so as we confront an unprecedented pandemic in which more than 200,000 of our fellow citizens have died and millions more are struggling and suffering both from physical illness and the economic collapse, disproportionately impacting Native people, Black and brown people, low-wage workers, we offer these prayers for a free and fair election, which is threatened not only by the pandemic, but a rise in a militarized form of violent white supremacy. And so on the eve of this election, I offer this prayer. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, God who is the God of our ancestors, God who spoke through Abraham and Sarah, Moses and Miriam, speak to us now. Speak to us through the votes of the widows, the orphans, and the strangers, the votes of the poor. God, we know that for every voice to be heard, every vote must be counted. So speak to us, God, through the votes of low wealth people and people struggling in poverty. Speak to us through the voices of people with disabilities and pre-existing conditions and those struggling with illness. Speak to us, O God, through the votes of low-wage workers, frontline workers, healthcare workers, first responders, doctors and scientists and nurses, and all those who are trying to make it right for all of humanity. God, speak to us through the votes of frail elders, and speak to us through the votes of our young people, because it is the legacy of our elders and the dreams of our children that are at stake. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, God who is the God of our ancestors, Inspire this next generation of your children, not only to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with you, but to realize your vision for a more just society by protecting and defending all your children through democracy and the right to vote. Ken Yehi Ratzon. May it be your will, O God.
Good morning. I'm Rev Andre Alexander with the National Council of Churches, and I serve as the Associate General Secretary for Action and Advocacy. I am hopeful this morning. I am hopeful today. We have been gathering together around the country, praying and fasting and preparing for changing this country. The Hebrew scripture that I would like to lift up to you, it actually comes from Hebrews, out of the Holy Script of the Christian Church, says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us set aside any weight, anything that clings to us, so that we can run with perseverance the race that is set before us." We have been running for a long time. And again, I am hopeful. Yes, hopeful and even joyful, because out of various depths of despair, we are seeing evidence of a united coalition of we, the people, saying enough is enough. I am hopeful because as this scripture that we have been leaning on with the Poor People's Campaign and the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference, Isaiah says, "Shout out. Do not hold back. Lift up your voice like a trumpet." We are shouting. We are marching. We are voting. And at this time, over 100 million people have already voted. I am hopeful because those who have been stamped with marginalization, has had the stamp of marginalization, have been empowered. And we are saying together, enough. Those who have not been included in public debates have said, we matter. Millions already of low-wealth people have organized, are voting and making their demands. Millions of formerly caged persons who were counted out, and when they were locked away in jails and prisons, are voting and making their demands, even demanding that they have the right to vote. Millions of people with disabilities are voting and making their demands. I am hopeful. Out of despair, we are finding our voice, and we are united. When the earth has cried, "I can't breathe," when dying Black Americans have cried out, "I can't breathe," under the knee of those who have had their knees on their necks and ancestors' necks for generations, when our beloved family members inflicted with the COVID-19 virus said, "I cannot breathe," we have come together, we the people, and said, enough. I am hopeful because we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. The spirit of First Nation people, blood cries out. The spirit of those who came to this country on slave ships, their blood cries out. Those who came to this country as refugees and seeking a new America, a new place, a place where they were going to have that hope. We are surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses. I am hopeful because we are together. I am hopeful because we're together today, and we will be together tomorrow, and we will be together on January 21st, regardless of who wins this election, because this is just the beginning. Dr. King, in his final book, Where Do We Go From Here, said, "Neither our government nor any government that has sanctioned a century of denial can be depicted as ardent and impatient to bestow gifts of freedom. Our needlesome task is to discover how to organize our strength into compelling power so that the government cannot elude our demands. We must develop from strength a situation in which the government finds it wise and prudent to collaborate with us. I am hopeful because we are united. We are we the people. And we have set our demands before this government. And we are ready to fight not just today, but tomorrow and onward. I am hopeful because even though our various despairs may have some differences, we have found that we are indeed our brother and our sister's keeper. And that my pain is your pain and your pain is my pain. And together, we can change this country. I am hopeful.
Reverend Stephen Baines, honored to welcome you. I will read the bells for a just all citizens. Vote without intimidation and harassment. We offer a call to prayer for a just democracy for each person across race, ethnicity, religion, gender, and sexual orientation. We ring bells for a just democracy that eradicates racist voter suppression and lifts up the people, including one of the millions of disenfranchised voters. We ring bells for a just democracy that respects all workers and knows each of the 226,000 Americans who have died from COVID-19 as essential and sacred. We lift voices and chant for a just democracy that fights poverty, not the 140 million poor and low-income people. We sound the shofar for just democracy that ensures health care for all, including the 133 million Americans with pre-existing conditions. We ring bells for our sacred earth, including the sacred lands of First Nations and Indigenous beloved in peril now, as well as for our water and for our children to live. We ring out bells to remember at our core we are who we are and who this country may yet be. We ring out bells with clarity of conscience and sacred duty surrounding in our very souls for those within this country and well beyond, recognizing our responsibility and impact across the world. We ring the bells for justice. Amen. Ashe. Shalom.
My name is Bishop Greg Fan. I am a man of faith. I believe in being led by the Scripture, and I lead by the Scripture. I believe the soul of America now is at stake. I believe men and women of faith will do the right thing. I believe that men and women in Georgia and elsewhere should be able to jog down the street and not be afraid to be gunned down. I also believe that Georgians, and especially Georgians, should not be afraid of the intimidation or the fear through voter suppression not to vote. I believe that COVID-19 would have been lessened and we would have saved many, many lives had we had a wiser leader. I'm asking you to join me and others, faith leaders. Let's begin the healing of our land. Let's do the right thing.
Hello, I'm Nicole, and I cast my ballot in the state of Texas. And I am a person of faith, and I believe that God helps those who help themselves. So, being that we all have the right to vote, we need to go out there and do our part. Help the Lord help us, right? So, let's vote for compassion, kindness, unity, and this way we can see a brighter day.